Hi lovely people, and you're all welcome back to my channel. My name is Jane, and on today's tutorial I'll be taking you on a step-by-step journey on how to draft a fitted female pants. Okay, so in this video you're going to learn the basics on how to draft a female pants. So basically this video I'm going to concentrate just on developing the pattern for the front and the back. So maybe in my next video I'll be making a tutorial on how to cut the waistband and also the pocket. Okay, so please guys, if you're new to my channel, do well to subscribe, put on the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video, and also like, share and recommend my videos to your friends. Okay, so moving forward, the measurements you'll be needing for this tutorial are the waist, hip, knee and ankle circumference. Okay, you'll be dividing your waist by 4, dividing your hip by 4. You will also, but for your ankle and your knee, you'll be dividing that by 2 as well. All right, so moving on to, we are going to be needing your crotch depth and also your bust band measurement for the dart placement. Okay, so the tools we'll be needing for this tutorial are basically the pattern paper, my pattern master, the tape rule, scissors and some markers to go with it. All right, so guys, without wasting much of our time, let's jump straight into the video. So first off, I'm going to draw a straight line at the top of my pattern paper just to indicate the starting point, and that line is also going to serve as my waistline as we move further in this video. And after drawing that 1 inch of paper, and also draw at the other side of my paper and also mark a straight line just so that we get our paper prepped for this tutorial. All right, and for this video I'll be making use of 39 inch. So I placed my tape from the waistline and then I went ahead to mark 39 inch. Wherever 39 inch stopped, I just marked that. I'll be marking it across the paper just so that we have a straight line, a line that is perpendicular to each other. Okay, so now I have gone ahead to mark the 39 inch on the other side of my paper, and next up I'm going to just draw a straight line to connect the 2 points together. Okay, so I'm going to be using my pattern master to draw out that straight line, and that new line, which is the length of the pants, is going to also serve as the ankle. Okay, so I'm just going to place the ankle on that line. I'm going to just write down the ankle on that line. So next up, I'll be placing my tape on the waistline, and then I'll be marking my hip, the distance from my waist to the hip, and also the distance from the waist to my crotch line. So I have gone ahead to place those measurements from on that line that I marked previously, the starting point line. So I have placed my hip measurement, my hip, the distance from my waist to the hip, and the distance from the waist to the crotch. So for me, from my waist to my hip is 8 inches, and then from my waist to the crotch line is 10. I'll make use of 10 inch. So I've gone ahead to also square out those lines. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a straight line for each of the points that I've marked, just so to indicate what each of the points are. So next up, I'll be placing my tape on the waistline so that we can get the knee measurement. So you can decide to place your tape on your crotch line to your ankle, and then you divide it by 2 and go up by 1 inch for your knee if you cannot get your accurate knee. But for me, I measured from my waist to where my knee is, and I have placed that down. So I placed my tape on the waistline and then measured to where my knee is, and then I've just gone ahead to mark that point with a straight line. Okay, like I said previously, if you are not able to get your knee measurement accurately, if you're not able to measure your knee measurement accurately, all you need to do is to place your tape at your crotch depth and then your ankle, measure the distance between those 2 points, and then divide it by 2. And when you divide it by 2, you're going, whatever value you get there, you go up by 1 inch or 1.5 inch. That will be your knee line. All right, so moving forward after this, So I'll place my tape on my waistline and then mark the quarter of my hip measurement on my waistline, and also mark quarter of my hip measurement on the hip line as well as on the crotch line. So quarter of my hip measurement is I have 40 inches. Now my hip is 39. I added 1 inch for ease allowance. Okay, my hip is 39. I added 1 inch for ease allowance, that's making it 40. So I divide that 40 by 4. I have 10 inch. So I've gone ahead to mark 10 inch on the waistline, on the hip line, and also on the crotch line. And then I connected those points that I marked with a straight line to create box there. So now that I've done this, the next thing is to create the crotch extension for the front. Now what you do is you go over to your crotch line, that is the line below your hip line, and then measure what you have on your crotch line. So I have 10 inch. You measure what you have on your crotch line and then you divide it by 4. So whatever value you get, you place it on that point and then extend it. Okay, so my hip measurement on my crotch line is 10 inches, and then I divided it by 4 and I had 2.5. So I've just extended the crotch line by 2.5. all right, good. So next up, we are going to be placing our curve for the front. Now for you to place your curve, all you need to do is to go up on that crotch line. From your crotch line you go up by 2 inches, and from your crotch line upward you go up by 2 inches. When you mark 2 inches, and then you come out a little by half an inch. Okay, when you go up by 2 inches, you come out by half an inch, just so that the crotch curve is not too deep. Okay, you don't need to draw your crotch too deep. It won't, so that you won't be having any tightness around your crotch or looseness around your crotch. So I came out by half an inch, and then I will be connecting those 2 points from the 2.5 that I marked extension to the half an inch up until the straight line that I marked up to my waist. So I just connected it like so with my pattern master. You can see now we've gradually formed the front crotch depth. So now the next thing you'll be doing is to measure what you have on that crotch line. So including your crotch extension, you measure it, whatever value you have, you divide it by 2, and then you place that value on your crotch depth. So for my crotch depth extension, I had 12.5. After adding the 2.5, I had 12.5, and I went ahead to mark the middle of that 12.5, and then I'm going to also take I marked 12.5, and then the middle of that 12.5 I marked it on my crotch line, and then I divided that 12.5 by 2. I had 6.25, and then I went ahead to mark 6.25 on my knee line and also on the ankle line. Okay, so the thing here, let me go over it again. On your crotch line, you get the value, you place your tape on your crotch line and measure what you have in its whole entirety, and then you divide it by 2, and that division you place it on the crotch line, on your knee line, and on your ankle line. Okay, and then from there we are going to mark a straight line to connect from the crotch line to the knee line and to the ankle line, just so that we have a middle line to place our circumferences on, our measurements on. Okay, so I've just gone ahead to connect from the middle of my crotch line that I marked to the middle of the hip, to the middle of the knee line, and down to the ankle line. So I've just drawn a straight line, and that straight line, we can call it the center line or the grain line. So I've also gone ahead to indicate what that line is, which is my knee line. I've gone ahead to indicate what my crotch, that the line above my heel line, it's my crotch line, and then the other is my hip line. So when you're doing this, make sure you don't get the lines confused. Okay, so next up, after I have gone ahead to determine this grain line, I'm going to now place my knee circumference. So your knee, you're not dividing your knee by 4 inches. This time around, you're dividing your knee by 2 because you only measured one knee. Okay, so make sure that you measure your knee accurately before placing it on the pattern paper. So my knee is 16 inches. I divided it by 2 and I have 8 inch, so I'll be marking 4 inch because I have a grain line, that is center line on my knee from my crotch line to my ankle line, and my knee circumference is 16 divided by 2. I have 8. I'll be placing 8 on that value, so meaning that I'll place half on one side of the division and half on the other side. Okay, so I've just gone ahead to label that line. I've just gone ahead to mark it as my green line. All right, so basically you could just go ahead and label and divide your knee circumference by 4, but I think for beginners it will be easier if you just divide it by 2 and then place the value at that midpoint. Okay, make sure you place the value at that midpoint and then mark what you get. So like I said, my knee was 8 and then I placed half of 8 is 4. I placed 4 at that midpoint and then I marked 8 at both sides of my knee line. I hope you understand. So going over to the ankle line, we'll also do the same thing for the ankle. My ankle is 13 inches and I've gone ahead to divide 13 inches by 2. I have 6.5, and then 6.5 I place the middle of 6.5 on that midpoint, that middle line, and then I marked the value on each of the sides. So after you have done all of this, next step is to connect your points together. So we'll be connecting with a straight line from the ankle to the hip line, and then we'll switch it up with either a hip curve or I'll use my pattern master to connect the curve to the hip line. All right, so we are just going to do that now. So I will take my pattern master, place it on the value that I got on my ankle straight up to my knee line. Okay, so I've gone ahead to draw a straight line up to my knee line from the ankle, and then from my knee line I'm going to connect the line up straight to my hip line. So I'm just going to be using my curve ruler. Okay, I'm going to be using this pant curve to connect the points. So I'll place this pant curve on the knee line and then make sure that it touches my hip line, and then I'll connect it like so with a curve. Okay, after that I will go to my waistline and take quarter of my waist measurement. So quarter of my waist measurement is 7.5. I added 1 inch for that, and that will be 8.5. So I will connect that point to my hip line. I will place my curve on my hip measurement on my hip line, and then I will connect it straight to my hip line. So we have created the side seam for the pants. So this is how you do that. We've created the side seam, we've joined everything together at the side. So moving forward to the other side of the pants, we are going to also do what we did for the outer seam of the pants. For the inner seam, I'm going to take my pants curve as well, and then I'll place it on the crotch line, and then mark a slant line, not that deep. Make sure that your curve is not deep. Just mark a slant line from your crotch down to your knee line, and then continue the line down to your ankle line with a straight line. Alright, so I have gone ahead to mark the straight line, and our front pattern is almost ready. And then after this, I will just go ahead and find the dart placement. So you'll be needing your bust, that is your bust span measurement, your nipple to nipple measurement. So for me, my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, and I divided it by 2. I have 4, so I'll be placing that 4 on my waistline from my crotch line, not from the out seam, from the in seam. Okay, from the in seam I'll place my tape, and then I'll mark 4 inches, and I'll open the legs of the dart by ½ inch on both sides. So the length of the front dart is going to be 4 inches. Okay, I have gone ahead to mark that, and next up I'm just going to connect the dart legs with my pattern master. So I'm just doing it with pencil so that I'll get very accurate measurement. So I've gone ahead to use the marker to draw out the dart leg. I'm going to be using a different color of marker so that you can see what the dart looks like. So I took half an inch on both sides, 1 inch. Remember, I added 1 inch to my waistline to make it 8.5. So that 1 inch is for the dart. I've gone ahead to create the darts, and then next up I'm going to be raising the sides, that's the side of my pants, by half an inch, just so that it sits nicely on your waist when you make your pattern, when you make this pattern on your fabric. Okay, so I've gone ahead to extend the sides of my waist by half an inch, and I reconnected it back to my waistline. So after I've done this, next up I'm just going to add seam allowances all around the pattern. So this video is just basically how to develop the pants pattern and all of that. In my next video I'm going to show you how you can cut your waistband and pockets. Okay, so I'm just going ahead to smoothing out any rough edges that I have. And okay, so now after smoothing that out, I will go to the waistline and then mark a 2-inch extension for the zipper fly, for where the zip is going to sit. So for the zipper fly, I took 2-inch from the waistline and also 2-inch at the hip line. That is where the zip is going to stop. And then on that 2-inch, on that hip line, I'll be extending the line by 2 inches as well. And I will use my pattern master to connect these 2 points together. And then when I get to the hip line where my zipper fly is supposed to stop, I'm going to make that curve, that curve that you usually see in front of pants trousers. So I'm just going to use my pattern master to create that curve for the zipper fly for the front. Okay, so after I have done this, next up I will go ahead and I've gone ahead to add half an inch seam allowance all around the pattern, at the sides and also at the crotch line. I will also extend it to, I will also add half an inch underneath my zipper fly to connect it to my crotch extension. And then when I have done this, next up I will go over to the waistline. Remember that I raised my waist by half an inch, okay, just so that when you make your pants, it sits nicely on your waist. Okay, so I will go over to that waistline and also make sure that I connect that half an inch that I marked as my seam allowance to the original waistline. Okay, now that I have done that, so I've just taken my pattern master to connect that point. So next up I will take 2-inch seam allowance for my ankle. So you shouldn't take lower or lesser than that, because when you fold your pants, it's supposed to look good. Okay, it's supposed to look good when you fold it. So at the ankle I will take 2-inch for seam allowance for folding it at the hemline, and then I will connect the both sides together. Now after I have done this, I also open up the ankle by half an inch so that when you fold it over, and when you fold it over, you don't run short of fabric. Okay, so you don't run short of fabric. So I will open up the ankle by half an inch, just slightly, or 2.5 inch at the ankle, just so that when you are hemming the ankle, you do not have shortage of fabric. All right, so after I have done this, next up I'm going to move over to the back and we're going to draft the back. Okay, over, we are done with the front, and then we are going to be drafting the back. So I will place a fresh pattern paper on the front, just so that I trace off the front on a separate sheet of paper. Now I'll be tracing the front pattern without the seam allowance. Okay, So I'll just go ahead and lay my pattern paper on the front and trace it out. Okay, so I've gone ahead to trace out the front pattern on a fresh pattern paper without the seam allowances. So next up, I'll be extending the crotch line and also the knee line and the ankle line. So I'll draw a straight line to extend the crotch line forward, outward, and also the same thing at the side seam as well. I'll go ahead and extend the line out, and then I'll come over to the knee line and also extend the lines as well outward. I'll do the same thing for the ankle. I'll also go ahead and extend it as well. Okay, so after extending this point, next we are going to go over to the my crotch line and get the extension for the back. So usually the back pattern is longer than the front. Okay, so I'll place my tape on the crotch line, and then that's 2.5 inch extension that I have on my crotch line. I'll be extending my crotch line by 2 inches for the back crotch line. Okay, so I'll place my tape on the crotch line and extend the crotch line by 2 inches. On that 2.5 crotch extension for the front, I'll tilt it upward to mark 2 inches, just so as when we are marking the curve for the back, we have a guideline so that it doesn't go too deep or too shallow for the back crotch. Okay, so next up, on that 2.5 that you have on your front crotch, you take it up to your waistline and extend the back crotch by that 2.5 inch. So you place it on top of your back extension and then just mark that down. Okay, so after you've marked that, the next thing you'll be doing is to draw a straight line connecting to the point where the crotch curve for the front sits. Okay, so that 2.5 that you extended for your back, you connect a straight line to that point, and then when you connect a straight line to that point, you now connect it down to the 2 inch. You now make a curve from that 2 inch that you marked outward from the front crotch extension, and then you create that curve. Okay, so basically guys, I kind of forgot this part, but thank God I didn't forget. I will show you later on in the video. For the back crotch, after you've marked the 2 inch extension, make sure that you come down by 1/2 inch. Okay, so you won't see it now, you see it later on in the video where I made the correction. So I've gone ahead to mark the 2.5 inch that I extended my back crotch upward. I connected it to the line, and then I'm going to just draw out the curve from the 2 inch extension that I made from the front curve. Okay, so I've just gone ahead to do that, and my back crotch, my back extension is looking very, very nice. Okay, so just make sure that you do not take the curve deeper than what it's supposed to be. So I've gone ahead to use my pencil to just mark out the curve so that I get an accurate curve for the back extension. Okay, so after that, moving forward, I've gone ahead to also indicate what each line is: the hip line, the crotch line, my knee line, and also my ankle line. Okay, so I've gone ahead to indicate what each of these lines are. So now that we are done with the back crotch, the next thing we are going to do is to work on the knee. So on my knee line, I'll be taking 1 inch on both sides. Okay, I'll be taking 1 inch on both sides of my knee. I'll place 1 inch on the inseam and 1 inch on the out seam. Okay, and then I'll come over to my ankle line and also place 1 inch on my ankle line inseam and 1 inch on the out seam as well. And then next up, I'll be connecting these points together. So I'll place my curved ruler on my back crotch extension, and then connect from that point to the 1 inch that I drew on my knee line, and also draw it down to my ankle line. Okay, so now guys, like I said, I made a mistake on the back. I was supposed to come down by half an inch, but you will see later on in the video as we progress. Okay, so I've gone ahead to use my pattern master to draw a straight line from my knee down to my ankle for the inseam. Now for the out seam, okay, I'll go ahead and also draw a straight line connecting the ankle and the knee with a straight line. Okay, after connecting the knee and the ankle with a straight line, I'll move over to my waistline. Now my waist is still hanging. Now I'm going to be measuring what I have on my front waistline. I have 8.5. I will mark it at the back waistline, exactly what I have on my front. I mark it at the back waistline, tilting it to create a triangular shape. Okay, so I'm going to just draw a straight line to extend that waistline also, so that we can create the waistline for the back. So I've gone ahead to draw a straight line, and then I will be tilting my tape towards the 2.5 extension that I made for the back, and I'll be marking exactly where 8.5 inch stopped. Okay, and then I will use my ruler to connect from the waistline of the back crotch to the side seam of the back. Okay, so now that I've marked that down, next up I'm going to go over and just join that to my hip line. So that 8 inches extended and it's hanging at the side, so I'm going to connect that to my hip line. Okay, so I'll just draw a straight line to connect that point to the hip line, my waistline to the hip line. All right, so after connecting that point from my waist to the hip, next up I'm going to go and add half an inch seam allowance at the sides of my at the side seam, just to connect it to the knee line that is still hanging there. Okay, so after adding that half an inch to connect to the hip, to the knee line, I'll come over to my crotch. Remember I told you I kind of forgot to come down by half an inch on the back crotch line, so I'll come down by half an inch and then extend my back crotch to that half an inch that I marked, and then just go ahead and reconnect it back to my crotch depth. So guys, please do not forget this part, is very, very important. So I went down by half an inch on the back crotch line, and then I reconnected it back to the curve at the back. Okay, so now that I've reconnected the lines for the back crotch and the half inch that I took down, I've also gone ahead to add seam allowance to that. So moving over to the waistline, I'll take my dart, and I used 4 inches for my dart. So I'll place my tape on my waistline from the crotch line, and then I'll mark 4 inches, and then I'll open the dart length by half an inch on both sides. That is 1 inch, and then the length of the dart is going to be 5 inches. Okay, so take note that when you're marking your back dart, make sure that it is also following the shape of the back crotch. If you look at the back, you discover that it's not straight as the front. So when you're taking your back dart, make sure that it is also as slanted as the back crotch. Okay, so I'll go over and then mark my dart, open up the dart legs by half an inch on both sides, and I also said that I used 5 inch for my back dart. All right, so after marking this, next up I'll go over to the side seam and also raise the sides of my pants by half an inch like I did for the front, so that the both sides will match up nicely and they'll fit nicely on the waist as well. So after that, next up I will take to my ankle and also add 2 inch seam allowance to my ankle, and then we are done for this pattern. So the 1 inch that I took on both sides of my pattern, that is the knee line and the ankle line, will also serve as the seam allowance. So I didn't want to add an extra 1/2 inch to it, just so that I won't have a lot of bulkiness at the down part of the pant. So that is why I left it at 1 inch at both sides, but you can decide to add an extra seam allowance to yours if you want to, but for now I'll be leaving this pattern like so. And after I have done this, next step is I'm going to go ahead and cut the pattern. Okay, now after cutting the pattern, make sure that you indicate what each part is, front and back. You are cutting 2 pieces for the front and also 2 pieces for the back as well. And then make sure that when you place it on your pattern, cut it exactly how you have drawn it out, except you want to add an extra seam allowance to yours. Like I said, you can go ahead and do that. All right, so this is the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching my video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Please also put on the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. Until I see you in my next video, keep being beautiful and do take care of yourself. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.